Are the powers that be orchestrating a civil war with the whole 2020 selection? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Keep it as brief as possible. Try to get through as much stuff as I can. There's some new news. It seems to be indicating that tensions are definitely increasing. So we'll get into that. But first, I just want to do a very brief overview. I'll have a link. This is an article I wrote. And here you can see 4 days ago. So this really in-depth gets into a lot of basically the headlines and whatnot leading up to the election. And there's a reason so many people are talking about the potential of civil war leading up to and following the election, as pretty much everyone who has not been hiding out in a cave knows. There's millions of Americans that believe the election was stolen from Trump. Whether or not that's true, they believe it with all of their beings. And there's also millions of Americans that believe, fully 100% believe Joe Biden won fair and square, and that if Trump somehow gets in for another term with one of his legal battles, because there's many of those ongoing, or possibly through electors chosen directly by the states, that side's going to be convinced that Trump stole the election. So it's been set up in such a way that no matter what happens at this point, there are going to be millions of Americans that believe that the presidency was stolen by the other side. So obviously that's a recipe for disaster, which is exactly, especially considering, the months leading up to this with the whole corona scam-demic deal, lockdowns, people losing jobs, losing income, bread lines, on and on. They're pissed. And this is just obviously going to make tensions even worse. So really, if you were going to, orchestrate a civil war, you picked the right year to do it. And I don't think if I tried to think of a better way to do so, I don't think I could actually come up with a better way than the whole way this election's turned out. And maybe it's not. Maybe that's not what's happening. But it just looks to me that's what's going on. A lot of people, a lot of other people are talking about this too. So there's clearly a lot of signs that indicate that this is going on. So here we've got a simulation. You can see the headline here. Experts held war games on the election. Their findings brace for a mess. And that's from the USA Today. So the conclusion by those who held the simulation, election simulation, said, quote, each scenario except for a Biden landslide win ended in violent protest and a constitutional crisis. And that's exactly where we are right now. At least we've got the constitutional crisis deal going on right now. We'll get into a little bit later. There's definitely states that appear to have violated the Constitution in the way the voting went down. And we did have some violent protests around the election leading up to it and after, but not as bad as some may have, thought it was going to be. So good for the short term, there wasn't more violence. Obviously, violence is not the answer, but those in power, as long as the violence is between the peasants fighting the peasants, the left versus the right, so on and so forth, they really don't care. It's only if people violently rise up against the system, the establishment, that they care. And even then, I obviously don't think violence is the answer, but, it just looks like it's going that way, sadly. So I'm not trying to fearmonger anyone or, have any alarmist end times type reporting going on. I can see the signs, and I just kind of want to, lay out what I've seen. And tensions definitely are rising, and that's definitely the fault of the media. They decide what the masses who are plugged in believe by what headlines and what evening news they report. So following the election, this is the kind of stuff coming from the left that, is going to lead nowhere good. So here's a tweet. It says, any are now promoting rejection of an election or calling not to follow the will of the voters. And of course, they're assuming that the will of the voters was Biden and that there was no fraud. That's the assumption here. or making baseless allegations of fraud should never serve in office, join a corporate board, find a faculty position, or be accepted into polite society. We have a list. So that's not ominous at all. Obviously, if you've been following my channel, you've got, or my blog here on Hive, I've got a lot of videos and posts I put together in the weeks immediately following the election. There is a lot of evidence of fraud. It might not be as widespread to constitute a stolen election as the Trump team claims, but there was fraud, and it's obvious to anyone that's willing to look at it in an unbiased fashion. However, these people hate Trump so bad, they're never going to believe that Trump could possibly win the election. So they're just obviously going to say that anything that contradicts their conclusion that the media told them. Media said Biden won, therefore Biden won. So that's where we're at. But this is just a little scary, because you can't be telling millions of Americans that just because they allege fraud when it looks like there was indeed fraud, that all of a sudden you can never serve in office or never be accepted into society. I mean, that's very polarizing, and I think that's exactly what's going on right now. Intentionally, the people are being polarized against one another. So this wasn't new following the election. It was, people were gearing up for this. Here's a left-wing group, Move On. It's a conglomerate of a large number of left-wing groups, and this is a Fox News headline from September 8th. These groups gear up for mass public unrest after Election Day. So it says that members of the group held a Zoom call in which they discussed how they can plan for Election Day and then coordinate large-scale civil disobedience and what one participant called mass public unrest if, as they predict, President Trump and his supporters contest November's election results. So it's interesting that they would already predict that President Trump would contest the election. That's exactly what the simulation up here predicted. This simulation, it predicted that Trump would contest the election. And by the way, or Hillary Clinton said Biden should never contest the election, no matter what, to fight to the end. But when Trump does that, takes that same approach, it's bad, orange man, and the media just goes to town. The media hates Trump, and I'm not a Trump supporter, but I do support his efforts to fight to expose this fraud, because we've had election fraud in this country at least for 2 decades. I mean, the Bush versus Gore kind of underscored that, and we know the machines are easily programmed to rig an election. So all of this has been documented in the past. This is nothing new. We've all known that fraud can happen, so it's ridiculous to say fraud can't happen in America, and that's exactly what the media said. Immediately following the election, they cut off Trump in a big speech. The corporate media cut him off. They didn't just argue against what he said. They literally cut a live feed of the speech made by the President of the USA. That's kind of unprecedented for the media, even this establishment media, to pull a move like that, where they literally cut the President of America off, President of the USA, off from a live speech just because he claims the election was stolen from him. Maybe he's making it up. I think the American people still deserve to hear what he thinks, no matter how ridiculous it is. Anyway, so we've got these leftist groups that may be in the camp of BLM, Antifa. So we've already had left-wing protests, riots, some were riots anyway, violence over the summer, almost as if that was prepping for something that was gonna come after Election Day. So we've got that. We've got left-wing groups planning well before the election, that they anticipated what's happening right now, and that they said they're gonna plan mass public unrest. So we haven't seen so much of the massive public unrest. There's been a little bit here and there in the cities, but nothing too massive yet. Of course, the game's not over. The election show is not over yet. There still could be a Trump win with legal battles. It could definitely be a Biden win, obviously. And I think that no matter which one happens, there's going to be millions of Americans that immediately feel disenfranchised because the coverage has been setting it up for that exact result. So here on the other side, this is from the Atlantic, screenshot here from their November 2020 issue, and it says, a headline, a pro-Trump militant group has recruited thousands of police, soldiers, and veterans. And here it talks about Stuart Rhodes, the founder of the Oath Keepers, I believe, and this is just the introduction, but it says Rhodes was driving around South Texas getting ready for them, the Antifa protests, I believe they're talking about. He answered his phone. This is what he said. Let's not F around. We've descended into civil war. So here, this is what the media, of course, the Atlantic, very much pro-war establishment operation here at the Atlantic, but we've descended into civil war. So they intentionally choose that. Setting the stage, predictive programming, this is what they do. They prepare us with their headlines to accept what they have decided they want to happen, and they pull the strings and make it happen. Not saying that this is what's going to happen, but it looks like this is what they're orchestrating. So here we've got another headline from Australian news. U.S. election 2020, violent protests expected amid fears of new civil war. So they're putting it right in the headlines that there's fears of a new civil war following the U.S. election. And then, as I explained at the beginning of the video, how they've set it up so that they've set up a perfect recipe for civil war. Less than 2 days from the U.S. election, it says the nation continues to be gripped by violent protests, with authorities fearing they could just be the start. So there's the predictive programming that what we saw over the summer could just be the start of a greater, more widespread violence following the election, and now the stage is set for that very scenario. Here we've got from the Washington Examiner talking about a poll from October 1st, a little bit further back, about a month before the election. Powder keg, 61% say U.S. on verge of civil war, 52% already preparing. So this was a poll done over the summer, and here's the little pie graph. So the question was, how much do you agree with the statement, I'm concerned that the U.S. could be on the verge of another civil war? 40% of Americans strongly agreed that the U.S. could be on the verge of another civil war. So that's a little concerning that so many Americans think that, but that's probably an indication that there's signs out there, obviously, that this is coming, or else so many Americans wouldn't be concerned about it, obviously. So it also found that 52% are so convinced that it's just around the corner, right after Election Day, that they're putting away food and other essentials, and so on and so forth. And that, this kind of prepping has been brewing for years, but now it's further driven by fear of coronavirus-induced shortages, which we saw in the spring, and now they're calling for dark winter, so such shortages could be coming right around the corner again, this time coinciding with potential civil unrest, at the very least, a lot of anger from whatever side loses the presidential race. And then after, following the appointment of Joe Biden as the official winner before the electors were chosen by the media, after that, they latched on to that he won, and that's that. And then we started getting these headlines like this that aren't, they don't seem to be, making it look like there could be a civil war just right around the corner. Like we got this one. This is no conventional coup. Trump is paving the way for a virtual confederacy. That's not gonna, put the idea that a civil war is right around the corner into people's mind. That's not predictive programming at all. And then oddly it says, this was Friday the 13th, interestingly enough, it says, race is the message behind Trump supporters' legal shenanigans and a keystone for a Trumpian government in exile. That is absolutely 100% false. Race is not the message behind the people who include not only as supporters but a whole bunch of independent non-Trump supporters that just see evidence of fraud. They are just challenging those who say there's no fraud. They're trying to expose fraud. That's what's going on. Yes, a lot of them are diehard Trump supporters. Yes, a lot of them will blindly believe everything Trump says. But no, they're not all diehard Trump supporters. And there is enough evidence to have spurred this big movement, Stop the Steal. It's a whole movement now, and this cannot be denied. Fraud can be denied, but that a movement has formed now and probably going to outlast Trump, that cannot be denied. It's an anti-establishment movement, and it has nothing to do with race, everything to do with the fact that these people honestly believe there was widespread election fraud, and they just want an honest and fair look at the evidence, which they're not getting. They're not getting a fair shake in the courts. So here's another one, the lost cause of the Trumpocracy. And then, of course, they get the picture of the Confederate flag. So we have another, linking this Trump, what they're calling a Trump coup now. His attempt to maintain power, they're calling a coup. And this is being linked with the Confederate flag, which, as we know, when the Confederate States seceded, formed their own nation peacefully, that was sparked a war. And as we'll see, might be moving in that direction with some states moving towards, some states moving in the direction of wanting to not actually outright concede, but we'll see. There's definitely some splits going on in this country right now. So then we get a bunch of articles about how the Trump's efforts, just basically his legal battles, which, by the way, are nothing new. Many candidates in the past have contested results. It's never been deemed as a desperate coup attempts. They've always just been deemed as your right as a candidate to contest results, ask for recounts, let it all play out in court, make your appeals, and then if once everything's been settled, all the legislatures have convened, they've all cast their electors, every legal battle has been finished, then if you were to continue to cling to power and, say, use the military to block Biden from entering the White House, at that point, then maybe you could say, yes, that's a coup. But what we see the past month, not been a coup. It's simply been a sitting president. He's still the president, and as much as I and many other people don't think he's a great president, he's still the president, and he's challenging the election results in legal battles and by other means. That is not a coup attempt. That's simply challenging the election results. So anyway, here's the headlines, which are much, of course, anti-Trump. That's just how this... It's always been. For 4 years he was in office, the media was always attacking Trump on things that they would never attack a Democrat on. That's just how it's been. Trump's got a lot done for the establishment, but at the same time, the establishment has chosen him to be their dumping bag. They just dump on him all the time. They get people to hate him. It's just part of the way how they divide the people. They get all their eyes on Trump. But anyway, this one headline, clown coup, Trump's efforts to overthrow democracy as well run as his business and presidency. So overthrow democracy, that's what apparently a legal challenge contesting an election that's believed to be fraudulent is now seen as overthrowing democracy. And by the way, we're a republic. The media doesn't like to talk about that. Democracy is nothing more than mob rule, where 51% of the people can take away the rights of the other 49%. That's why this country was set up as a republic. The founding fathers, as many flaws as they had, they knew a thing or two about democracies, and they got that right. Mob rule's not the way to go. So it's interesting that all these, all the rhetoric in the past month has been about Trump trying to overthrow democracy. Here we've got another headline from the Salon. Can Trump really stage a coup? Experts weigh in on whether it's possible. Even a clownish coup can still hurt democracy. Trump's coup might not work. The coup stage of Donald Trump's presidency. So all just basically saying that his legal challenges and simply alleging fraud is somehow a coup attempt. So Obviously, if he wins, the left is going to be up in arms. Here's another one. Donald Trump is attempting a coup. I fear what comes next. So the support, the diehard Trump haters, the never Trumpers, the radical leftists are going to be up in arms if Trump somehow pulls off a win. Likewise, like I've already said, if Biden gets put in like it looks most likely gonna happen, then you've got millions of Americans who feel very disenfranchised, feel like Biden staged a coup. So they've now set it up so that either way it goes, you've got millions of Americans believing that what the sitting president won through a coup, no matter how it turns out. And the left especially is going to be, after being told for over a month that Biden's the next president, if Trump's to get in, I mean, that, I think, going to see a lot of left-wing violence. So, and then on the right, of course, you've got the same kind of thing on the right. It's not only the left. I mean, they're definitely the establishments backing the left right now, but the left-right is just a facade. They're both puppets of the same masters, same establishment, same war machine, same bankers. So people that are on the right are also fueling this type of talk. It's not just the people on the left with their bias. There's also people on the right. So here we got a Stop the Steal rally in Georgia. I believe this was on December 2nd here. Listen to this. These are fighting words. These are the kind of words that get people riled up to the point where they might be ready to fight a civil war. So just listen in here.
God Almighty created every one of us, and He created Donald Trump, and He gave him a task to fulfill in his life, and that was to be President of the United States in 2020, and he's going to be President of the United States for 4 more years. Watch it happen. The people will not allow it to be taken away from them, and neither will Almighty God. God's going to save this country. And He's going to use every one of you to do it. He's going to fill you with the spirit of King David the warrior. We are the rock. The people are the rock, and we're going to slay Goliath, the communists, the liberals, the phonies.
We're going to slay Goliath, slay the liberals. That's not words that might be inciting violence if Trump were to lose.
Joe Biden will never set foot in the Oval Office of this country. It will not happen on our watch. Never gonna happen.
Never gonna happen. And if it does happen, what are these people in this he got a big crowd here, Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell and the others. I watched most of it, but I'm not gonna play anymore. But he goes on, and other speakers also speak to this, but he goes on and he mentions 1776 revolution. He says some good things that I agree with, to get rid of both the Republican and Democrat parties. I'm all for that, but just the use of such fighting words, making it about God's battle, this religious overtones, that Joe Biden's never going to get in, we're never going to let that happen. This is just the kind of talk that gets the people at these rallies riled up and ready to fight. I'm not saying that's his intention. Obviously, people, relate to these biblical battles and legends and different things like that. Not always in a literal form, but just it's not the only time through this speech he talks like this. He's really fighting words, and you can take that how you want. But I can almost guarantee you, some people in this crowd are gonna be pushed to maybe they won't do it, but they're going to be tempted to use violence if Joe Biden wins. They're sold on the fact that Joe Biden stole the election, so if he becomes the sitting president, and this is the things that I don't want to say the leaders, but the spokespeople of this movement, this Stop the Steal, anti-establishment, pro-Trump movement, this is what they're saying. 1776, we're never going to let them steal our country. We're going to slay the Democrats, slay the communists. It's a little concerning, and it seems this type of talk is coming from both sides, and that's one of the reasons I think this is being orchestrated. This is interesting. November 13th, so just a little close to 2 weeks after the election, we got, probably most people know this, but Trump removes senior defense officials and installs loyalists, triggering alarm at the Pentagon. So if you're going to argue that Trump's ready to stage a coup or ready to use the military to stave off a coup by Biden, either way you look at it, this such a move. He put a new Department of Defense Secretary of Defense. He fired Mark Esper and put in, forget his name, but he put in what they're calling a loyalist. So this is the kind of move that one would do if they are preparing to stage a coup, military coup, or if they're preparing to use the military to attempt to stop a military coup. So say the military splits and part of the military is loyal to Biden and Trump actually wins and Biden is, needs to be put in and the military gets in a fight. You know how coups work. Anyway, no matter which way you look at it, this is a little concerning. And of course, the media is going to focus on this kind of stuff to get people more concerned really than they probably should be. And we've got General Flynn, who Trump pardoned not long ago. Sidney Powell is General Flynn's lawyer. She's big time in this Stop the Steal movement. So is General Flynn, apparently. We've got here the We the People convention. Calls for the president to invoke limited martial law to hold new elections. So that's not, that wouldn't piss off the left at all. Invoking martial law to hold a new election. That is the kind of thing that is easily pointed at as, look, this is an attempt at a coup. And General Flynn you shared this, and with the freedom never kneels except for God, he writes there. So it would seem that this, well, he's not in the military anymore, but he was in there for a long time. He was the head of the DIA, so he has a lot of inside contacts, and if he's sharing this, that's definitely something to be concerned about. I don't know what it might lead to, but I suppose it is a possibility that Trump is prepared to do something like this. And they're saying that this should be done to avoid civil war. That's what this We the People convention group is arguing. They're arguing that this is actually the only way to stop a civil war. So while that may or may not be true, if this does happen, that also could potentially spark civil unrest that could lead to a civil war for the different reason of pissing off the left. So very interesting. And then here is a headline: days after calling for a military coup, referring to that tweet, no doubt. Michael Flynn tells Gianno Pirro that governors should, quote, not certify these elections. And then here we've got from the Hill, this was, I guess 5 days ago now, Trump Pentagon nominee alleged Biden coup. So now we've got people, high levels of government, and it's making headlines that Republicans are alleging that what's going on with the election is a Biden coup. Obviously, the media has been saying for months that what's going on with Trump contesting the election results is a Trump coup. So as I've been saying the whole time, both sides are set to view the other side as a coup. And that really sets the stage to where we're at now. If you want to read this full article, I'll have a link in the description. A lot more stuff on my blog too. But let's go over here. So this now is breaking news from today. It was 17 states yesterday, but we've got 18 states that joined Texas in a Supreme Court lawsuit about the presidential election against 4 swing states. So this is very interesting. 18 states, now including Arizona, have joined a Texas lawsuit filed by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton against the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. That was filed on December 7th. The court has now ordered that the defendant states put in their arguments by the 10th, which is today. So we'll see how that plays out. And so all the states doing this, they're alleging basically that these 4 states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, all swing states, all big allegations of fraud, that they basically changed voting laws at the last minute and other things that were in violation of, that they held elections in violation of the Constitution. And then the argument basically is that by doing so, they disenfranchised the citizens of all these other states, because those states followed the rules, these states did not follow the rules, and in this case the rules being the Constitution of the United States. The states of Missouri, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, and West Virginia have all signed on to the brief backing the Texas suit. Arizona, latest state. This isn't unusual. So this is what is being alleged in the lawsuit. The states violated statutes enacted by their duly elected legislatures, thereby violating the Constitution. By ignoring, and that's true, they did do that. By ignoring both state and federal law, these states have not only tainted the integrity of their own citizens' vote, but of Texas and every other state that held lawful elections. Paxton said, their failure to abide by the rule of law casts a dark shadow of doubt over the outcome of the entire election. We now ask the Supreme Court to step in to correct the egregious error. And Ken Paxton is asking the Republican state legislatures in 4 states, those 4 states mentioned to be allowed, the ones being sued, that they be allowed to displace the will of the voters in those states and choose their own slate of electors, presumably to hand the election to Donald Trump. The Supreme Court is not going to allow that to happen, this Carpenter guy said. Well, we'll see about that. That might be true, or they might rule in favor of Texas, because there's 18 states now that are not happy with these 4 states having election rules changed, not by they were changed by, people that were not the legislatures. That's supposed to be Congress. Only Congress can change rules. And in all of these states, there were like election officials, county boards, so on and so forth, that changed election rules. It wasn't done by the state legislature. That automatically makes it an unconstitutional election, giving them the grounds to at least argue that all of the results should be thrown out, because there'll be no way now to go back and know, like what ballots were in violation and which weren't. Time to get that sorted out would have been before the election started. And I know there was another lawsuit in Pennsylvania because they in particular passed a law that was very clearly against their own state constitution, probably also the U.S. Constitution. So lots of stuff here, but this just wanted to show that that's new, and that's probably Trump said it's basically this is what I believe the Trump team is now relying upon. If this is lost if the Texas suit loses in the Supreme Court, there's not going to be much of a chance for Trump to win, in my opinion, and also in Trump's opinion. So the fact that 18 states, however, have backed Texas, meaning there's 19 states now that believe there's at least evidence of widespread fraud. Now that's definitely, when states are starting to, I don't want to say war against other states, but when they're definitely suing other states over something that's so, such a big polarizing issue as this, that's going to the Supreme Court. I mean, this is on the top level. We're getting division at the top level, at the top levels of government, at the states levels, at the Supreme Courts. And then we've also got these divisions going all the way down to the grassroots level. This is kind of what one needs for a civil war. One needs there to be a split from the top all the way to the bottom. Recently we're starting to see the splits at the top a little more clearly. There's states that are willing to step up and say, we don't believe this is right. We think there's evidence. We need to stop this. So interesting to see how that'll play out. Here we've got a Florida high school football game that featured thin blue line flag and anthem kneeling ending in a brawl. So there you go. You've got the BLM left-wing anthem kneelers, and you've got the hardcore right-wing super pro-cop back the blue people getting in brawls. That's the two extreme ends of the political spectrum, you know, going at it on a football field. This was on 4 days ago, so I guess this was on the 6th, December 6th. So let's just scroll down here. Funny that the tweet they put can't be accessed, probably some Twitter censorship going on. But okay, so here's the lowdown on this little story. The tension between the schools built when Mitchell players ran out onto the field with a thin blue line flag to commemorate fallen law enforcement officers. Some Wakiva players then kneeled during the national anthem. And we all know that kneeling is just basically meant to highlight police violence against blacks. It could be seen as disrespect against the police. And obviously those holding a thin blue line flag are very pro-police. So Wakiva players also told the Sentinel that Mitchell players were hurling racial slurs at them during the game. So the coach denies that, but if that's true, it would appear there's a little bit... The way they're writing it anyway is setting the stage for divide between the pro-cop and the anti-cop, the super right-wing pro-cop people and the super left-wing, like BLM factions of the left that tend towards violence. And obviously police tend towards violence, so those who are hardcore police backers are also supporting of violence. Here's the thin blue line flag. It's law enforcement flag for anyone who's not familiar with that. And then the next day, I believe, December 7th, tensions build even more, or headlines covering the tensions make it into the mainstream news cycle. Either way, it's happening. Explosive thrown through Michigan man's window. Victim thinks he was targeted over Trump support. So here we've got a Trump supporter attacked with an explosive. Antifa used explosives. We don't know who did this, but the man obviously thinks someone who hates him because he's a Trump supporter. And with the way things are going right now, it's understandable that this could be happening. It says here, a homeowner believes his personal politics led someone to throw an explosive through his window Saturday morning, causing extensive damage to his house. The man rushed to get his girlfriend and dog out of the house while they waited for police. Surveillance video captured by the homeowner shows the explosions, so it actually happened. I've seen video of it when police are continuing to investigate, and then he says here, some people say because I'm a pretty avid Trump supporter. That's why, when asked why did it happen, he says some people say because I'm a pretty avid Trump supporter. I always have my sign up. And then I read in another article, it says he has multiple flags, Trump flags on his property. So he's at least a well-known Trump supporter, and he believes, or some people, including himself, believe probably because of his politics, which in the current political landscape is definitely believable. Then we've got, so here again, there's another article. So it says, but why would anybody do this? And he says, some people say because I'm a pretty avid Trump supporter. So same quote that I just read. CBS News, same day, December 7th, and we've got a little bit of the opposite, opposing violence. So there was a Trump supporter attacked by what could be presumed, potentially painted as probably a violent leftist. Now here we've got Stop the Steal protesters threatened a Michigan official at home, and apparently they were armed. So you've also got armed people on the other side of the split now, and the right-wingers threatening a Michigan official, and not just any official, but Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. So the woman responsible for, in elections in Michigan where it is alleged by these Stop the Steal folks that there was fraud, and she would have probably likely been in on it, and her fighting against any push to audit the vote and whatnot would be seen, obviously, as aiding and abetting what these Stop the Steal folks would say is a coup. So Michigan State Secretary of State says armed protesters gathered outside her home. They were shouting obscenities and chanting into bullhorns in the dark of night. This is true. I did find a video of it. They were there. They were chanting statements. I didn't see any guns in the video that I watched, but doesn't mean there weren't armed people. In a statement posted on Twitter, she said the protesters were an extension of the noise and clouded efforts to spread false information about the security and accuracy of our elections that we've all endured in the month since the poll closed on November 3rd. So she's obviously in the camp that there's no election fraud, and this is just an extension of the clouded efforts, basically the propaganda to spread false information about the security and accuracy of our elections, which we already knew before this election. They're not secure and they're not accurate. We already knew that. It's just that this is the first time we've had a candidate willing to stand up and we have it turn into an actual movement. That's the only difference here. So can clearly see where this is going. This is playing right into the whole election narrative. She said, they targeted me in my role as Michigan's chief election officer, but the threats of those gathered weren't actually aimed at me or any other elected officials. They were aimed at the voters. Well, that's actually not true. They weren't aimed at the voters. They were aimed at her. But what she's trying to do here is paint the picture that if you question the vote, you're questioning the voters. Now, obviously, if there's fraud, that's entirely untrue. Obviously, if the vote is fraudulent, then questioning the vote is not actually questioning the voters. It's actually questioning, ballots that might not even come from human beings. So they just had to throw that out there, that she's obviously still using this as an avenue to push the idea, push the narrative. That's all it is, pushing the establishment narrative. So she said she has always advocated for peaceful protest, but there's a line crossed when gatherings are done with the primary purpose of intimidation of public officials who are carrying out the oath of office they solemnly took as elected officials. Now, without even knowing a single thing about her, I can almost guarantee very high chance she is not actually carrying out the oath of office, because almost no elected official carries out the oath of office to uphold the Constitution. So take that obviously with a grain of salt. This is just what establishment says when they're threatened. Now, obviously, I am not for the violence, but this is simply pointing out that on the same day the media chose to make headlines of people on what they would say is the right, armed people on the right, threatening Secretary of State in Michigan, a hotly contested state in this election battle. And same day we had here the Macomb County man, also in Michigan, targeted with explosives due to his politics. So it's not hard to see where this is going, even if both of these stories were completely fake stories. It's really the narrative that matters. The media chooses which stories to cover. The fact that they're covering these stories means something. They're putting this into the collective mind, into the thought processes. This is the predictive programming that they're carrying forth right now. They want people thinking, oh no, the other side is attacking this side. Oh no, the two sides are fighting each other. This will also probably this will get people riled up. Each side is going to be, they're going to want to get in and help defend their side, help fight the other side. So this is how the media riles people up. This is what they do. But it wasn't just her. There were actually other Democratic state leaders targeted, apparently, over the election. So let's listen to this Detroit lady here, newscaster.
Yeah, Keenan, we're live this morning at Michigan and Livernois. We're here in State Rep Johnson's district. She posted about that voicemail to her Facebook page and said it is just a sample of the messages she has gotten to her personal phone. It includes the use of the N-word. She says still, though, she will not be changing her number. And we do want to warn you this morning, what you're about to hear is disturbing.
How dare you bully witnesses on the stand? Should be swinging from a rope, you Democrats.
As she did bully witnesses on the stand. That's true. I'm not condoning the threats or the language of this anonymous caller, but I just want to point out that it's entirely true that she did dare to bully witnesses on the stand. So it's not a false statement. And we're gonna see this lady is by no means of good moral quality to be calling out people making threats.
You bully witnesses on the stand. Should be swinging from the rope, you Democrats.
A threatening, racist message targeting State Rep Cynthia Johnson over the weekend. The person on the other end of the phone, furious, shouting baseless claims that the election was stolen. It wasn't.
You gotta love that. Baseless claims that the election was stolen. It wasn't. Not even one mention of any evidence to prove our claims, but we're just gonna immediately throw out this other mountain of evidence and just call it all baseless and just say, nope, it wasn't. You just gotta love how the media is playing things right now. So that's what's going on there. She's also going to go on and talk about the Secretary of State, but I just wanted to throw that in there because this Cynthia A. Johnson is a real piece of work, and there's a reason that people, it's not surprising, let's just put it that way, it's not surprising that someone would call and threaten her. Let's just listen to what she has to say over here. This is another report entitled Michigan Lawmaker Disciplined for Threatening Trump Backers. So yeah, the lawmaker who's complaining about getting threats is herself dishing out threats. Let's take a listen here.
House Republicans have removed Representative Cynthia A. Johnson from the 3 committees she sat on. The fallout over a controversial video she posted on Facebook.
7 Action News reporter Kimberly Craig talked to Johnson and a Trump supporter who said the video left her blood boiling.
So this is just a warning to you Trumpers. Be careful. Walk lightly. We ain't playing with you.
That's not ominous at all. We ain't playing with you. Walk lightly.
Enough of the shenanigans.
That's part of the video on Facebook Representative Cynthia A. Johnson made last night that has Michigan Republicans accusing her of inciting violence.
And for those of you who are soldiers, you know how to do it. Do it right. Be in order. Make them pay.
It was a call for her soldiers to come after anybody that voted for Trump.
Johnson posted the video days after she made national headlines for threats she received after a House oversight hearing with Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani, during which she pushed back against allegations of voter fraud. Johnson explains what she says she meant by calling on soldiers.
In the black community, we call ourselves soldiers against racism, soldiers for democracy. That's what soldiers mean in our community.
Okay, so soldiers in our community, blacks, we call ourselves, us black people, and I love black people, by the way, but just going off what she said, us black people, we call ourselves soldiers in the fight against racism. So, soldiers like the Black Lives Matter folk, which some of them engaged in violent riots. So there's probably no calls for when she says calling on her soldiers to step up and make them pay. Speaking of the Trump people, not calling on violence like when the BLM took to the streets and smashed bricks through buildings, lit them on fire. Yes, the police definitely also carry out brutality against black people and white people alike. But these BLM people, these soldiers of hers, are not all nonviolent. So let's just make sure we understand that.
We talked to Roberta Adams, who says as a Trump supporter, Johnson's video made her feel so threatened that she contacted the Monroe County Sheriff.
They said that unless she says my name or gives my address, that they can't do anything about it.
Today, Speaker of the House Lee Chatfield and Speaker-elect Jason Wentworth released a statement saying threats to either Democrats or Republicans are unacceptable and un-American. They're even more unbecoming of an elected official.
Yes, that's so true. But in her case, that's just the way she is, and it's clearly not just this one issue, this one threat. I mean, she bullied people on the stand. This is clearly just the type of politician that she is. She appears to be a radical leftist, calling for violence against Trump supporters. Maybe I'm off. Maybe I'm misinterpreting it. Let's listen to it just one last time here.
And for those of you who are soldiers, you know how to do it. Do it right. Be in order. Make them pay.
It was a
Make them pay. So that's the state of the union right now. And yeah, just wanted to get this video out there. Links will be in the description. If you appreciate my work, please like the video. Please share it. Follow me on hive.blog/@JasonLiberty. If you would like to support my work, there'll be a link in the description to where you can donate Bitcoin, buy a t-shirt, stand for peace, and yeah, just like, share, subscribe, and hope you all stay safe out there, stay sane out there, stay free out there, and don't get caught up in the two-party politics, the divide and conquer game that these oppressors play. Just live free and don't buy into the nonsense. Don't fuel the split. And hopefully we can avert the potential coming civil war. Till next time, this has been Jason. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week. Peace.